At 4:46 a.m. on July 5, 1943, the first light reaches an improvised Luftwaffe strip near Belgorod, on the southern edge of the Kursk salient. The air smells like fuel and wet grass. Ground crews pull chocks and wave flashlights. The eastern horizon is already flashing, artillery from both sides, thousands of guns firing into the dark. In the cockpit of a Junkers U-87, a Stuka pilot straps in and checks his gauges by the dull glow of the instrument panel. He is 27 years old. He flies for Nazi Germany, for a regime already waging a war of annihilation in the East. His name is Hans-Ulrich Rudel, and by the time the war ends, German records and Rudel's own accounts will credit him with 2,530 combat sorties and 519 Soviet tanks destroyed, numbers that later historians will argue are nearly impossible to verify independently, sortie by sortie, wreck by wreck. At 5:03, his engine note rises. The U-87 rolls forward, tail lifting, then leaves the field at low speed. The Stuka is not fast, it is not elegant, it is a tool, built to put ordnance exactly where the pilot points it. By 5:17, he is climbing through broken cloud. Ahead is the reason this morning exists, Operation Citadel, the German offensive meant to cut off the Kursk bulge. On the ground, German armor is about to push into prepared Soviet defenses. In the air, the Luftwaffe's job is to smash the anti-tank guns, disrupt reserves, and, if luck and timing align, kill tanks before they can move. At 5:11, Rudel levels out and scans the tree line and fields for motion. The anti-armor variant associated with him later in 1943 is the Ju-87G Kanonenvogel, a Stuka adapted to carry underwing 37mm cannon pods. The concept is simple. Fly low, line up on a tank's thinner top armor or engine deck, fire short bursts, and break away before the ground fire finds you. The limitation is just as simple. The gun has very little ammunition, and the aircraft must expose itself to every rifle, machine gun, and anti-aircraft weapon in range. At 6:24, Rudel's formation approaches the front. The Soviet lines are awake now. Smoke columns mark the first hits. The Stukas begin to descend. At 6:31, he picks a road cut and a patch of trees, movement, a shape, a glint of steel. He drops his nose. At 6:32, the Stuka's nose points down at a shallow angle first. No full siren dive here, not the old textbook attack. The front below is already dense with smoke and dust. A vertical dive would be a gift to the gunners. At 6:33, Rudel steadies at low altitude, just high enough to see over the hedgerows and tree lines. The Stuka vibrates in rough air. The windscreen fills with ground detail, furrows, crater rims, the white scars of shell bursts. On the road, a column is trying to move under cover, trucks, towing vehicles, then the heavier shapes behind them. At 6:34, Tracer rises from the tree line. It is not a single gun, it is dozens of weapons firing at once. Rifles, light machine guns, and scattered 20mm and 37mm anti-aircraft pieces. The air in front of the aircraft turns into a grid of fast-moving lines. Rudel's job is timing. He cannot hover. He cannot circle without becoming predictable. He has to commit, fire, and exit. At 6:35, he aligns on the rear of the moving column. The Stuka's strengths are stability and visibility at low speed. Its weakness is everything else, especially when fighters are nearby. If Soviet fighters appear, the U-87 cannot run. At 6:36, he squeezes the trigger. The aircraft jolts as the wing-mounted cannons cycle. The recoil is visible in the sight picture. Each burst is short. Ammunition is limited, measured in seconds, not minutes, and the gun's value depends on precision. At 6:37, the target area is obscured by dust and smoke. He cannot linger to confirm anything. He breaks away hard, skimming above the fields, using terrain to hide from the heavier guns. At 6:41, he is back over friendly lines. His engine runs hot. The wing roots show new punctures, small holes that should not be there. A mechanic will later count them and decide whether the aircraft flies again. This is the environment that shaped Rudel's reputation: low altitude, repeated exposure, constant fire. His later fame as a tank hunter will be tied to the U-87G, introduced in 1943 as German ground attack units tried to answer a hard fact: Soviet armor could absorb punishment and keep coming. But the record is not a clean ledger. Tank kills from the air are difficult to confirm. Wrecks burn. Crews abandon vehicles and recover them at night. Multiple pilots attack the same target. The Eastern Front moves too fast for neat verification. At 7:12, Rudel lands, brakes hard, and taxis into a churned patch of grass. He climbs out and walks straight to the operations board. At 7:18, the next mission is already posted. At 8:02, the aircraft is refueled. Ammunition belts are reloaded. Armorers work fast with oily hands and short tools. The Stupa's wings sit low to the ground, making the gun pods accessible. The cannon most associated with the Ju-87G are 37mm BK 3.7 pods mounted under each wing, an anti-armor idea built around a heavy projectile and a narrow firing window. The trade-off is immediate. The guns add drag, reduce speed, and make an already slow aircraft slower. At 8:19, Rudel is briefed again. The battle has entered its first-day rhythm. German spearheads pushing into layered defenses, Soviet artillery responding, reserves moving under camouflage, anti-aircraft guns redeployed to protect armor and crossings. At 9:17, he is airborne for a second sortie. The route is familiar now. Climb just enough to navigate, then descend into the danger zone. The closer he gets to the front, the more the sky fills with smoke and dust. The earth below looks bruised. At 9:48, a Soviet tank group is reported near a tree line and a shallow ravine. The objective is blunt: stop it from reaching the main German armored thrust. For an anti-tank attack, the pilot is hunting weak points: engine deck, rear hull, top armor, or a lucky hit to running gear that immobilizes the vehicle and makes it vulnerable to other weapons. At 9:52, he drops to near treetop height. He does not fly straight at the target. He approaches at an angle, using the terrain as cover for as long as possible. He needs a clean line of fire and a clean exit. At 9:53, the ground fire begins again. He sees it before he hears it: puffs of impact in the air and the hard streaks of tracer. The Stuka's cockpit framing shakes. The airplane is a large target at low speed. At 9:54, he lines up on the nearest tank shape. In this kind of attack, the pilot sees fragments: a turret outline, a track line, a flash of metal, a shadow moving behind trees. He has seconds to decide whether it is a tank, a self-propelled gun, or something else entirely. He fires. The recoil punches through the airframe. The sight picture jumps. The window closes. At 9:55, he breaks away and pulls low, then climbs just enough to check the field again. Smoke rises from multiple points. Something is burning. But burning is not proof. A fuel truck burns. An ammunition carrier burns. A disabled tank may not burn at all. This is where the legend and the record collide. Rudel's credited results, especially the headline number of 519 tanks, were recorded by his side in a war where propaganda mattered and the Eastern Front created chaos in the details. Luftwaffe claims could be supported by witnesses, ground reports, and photographs, but confirmation was inconsistent. Soviet records rarely map cleanly to German claim lists. Battlefield recovery and multiple attacks on the same vehicle blur the accounting. By 11:06, he is back at the strip again, landing into churned mud and heat haze. He climbs down, face tight, and immediately starts talking about angle, altitude, gun effect, flak positions. At 11:18, the staff marks the sortie complete. The day is not over. Kursk is only beginning. By July 13, 1943, the tempo has changed. The German offensive stalls under losses and Soviet counterattacks. Airfields move forward, then back. Maintenance becomes triage. Fuel is precious. Aircraft are cannibalized for parts. The tank-hunting Stuka, slow, heavy, committed to low altitude, keeps flying because German ground units keep calling for it. Through 1943 and 1944, Rudel's role tightens around a single mission set, repeated close support sorties against armor, bridges, and columns. German paperwork and Rudel's later memoirs build the same picture: extraordinary sortie counts, an expanding tally of destroyed vehicles, promotions, and decorations. The broader war moves the other way. Soviet production grows, Soviet air defenses thicken, German losses become permanent. At 15:22, on February 8, 1945, during a ground attack mission on the collapsing Eastern Front, Rudel's aircraft is hit. The exact mechanics vary across accounts. What matters is the outcome. He is severely wounded. His right leg is later amputated below the knee. In a normal Air Force, that would end operational flying. At 09:40 on March 25, 1945, he is flying again, according to German accounts, back in the air despite the amputation, with a prosthesis and a cockpit adapted by necessity and willpower. It becomes the one-armed shorthand in retellings, even though the defining injury is the leg. The symbolism is obvious: a crippled pilot returning to a crippled war machine, insisting that the mission continues. At 23:01 on May 8, 1945, the European war ends. The numbers remain: 2,530 sorties, 519 tanks, a record that fits German claims but is difficult to verify independently at scale, especially in the chaos of late war reporting and the inherent ambiguity of air-to-ground kill confirmation. After the war, the story does not resolve cleanly into heroism. Rudel aligns himself with far-right politics and networks, becomes a writer and public figure in that world, and continues defending the cause he flew for. That choice stains everything that came before it. Skill in combat does not redeem the regime it served. His legacy is therefore split. In military aviation history, his missions are studied for tactics, low-altitude approach discipline, target selection, and the limits of cannon-armed close air support against armored formations. In historical memory, he remains a case study in how a personal combat narrative can be weaponized, how extreme claims persist, how verification breaks down, and how a record can be both operationally significant and morally compromised.